Okay, so where we today, 6th of February 2026, time is 16 hours 40. I'd like to start a new series based on questions I posed to one of the Disaster Relief Cert WhatsApp groups, specifically where the CPF executive committee members and committee members from sectors or neighborhood watchers, block watchers, and a few other key role players were invited to attend. And in essence, what I wanted to know from them was, based on the question as follows: what function do you envision your organization playing both during and after a disaster? There were a couple of comments that were put out. I think when I do the video rendition on this voice note series, it might be very short actually, I will post some of the comments that were in actual fact made. For example, in the event of a disaster, a JOC would be established as soon as possible, possibly by SAPS and CPF. This was done by CPF with the help of local Durban North Mosque, providing the space for the team to be on duty to dispatch assistance for incidents and provide updates during the July 2021 unrest and looting. Communication and coordination, another point that came up: safety and security oversight, support for vulnerable persons, resource management and rapid needs assessment, post-disaster recovery, collaboration and relationship building. Now, what was amazing throughout this question period were some of the other comments. For example, having gone through a tornado and many floods in our area, we have a pretty strong CPF team that jumps into action when the need arises. We've also been able to assist in finding missing people. We are very active with MVAs, felt and house fires, so much more, etc., etc. And there's another one, quite an extensive one, but I'll actually just cover a couple of points that the CPF are the first responders in our area, which brings me to the point of please listen to, at least listen to the video rendition of should first aiders be considered as first responders, where clearly they ought not to be. But also, again, a lot of, what the CPF in the particular area does get involved in, such as MVAs, DV or domestic violence, house robberies, ATM bombing, special operations, ZAMA operations, etc., etc. Somebody also replied that they've got an emergency plan, HQ during emergency situations, gathering points, volunteers available, emergency evacuation routes, established weapons and ammunition availability, lookout points, emergency road closures, field hospital location, water points and food stores. But I think the strongest message that was actually sent through to me really needs a pat on the back, if I can put it to you that way. But the writer stated, I've struggled with how to answer this question. Since disaster situations, by definition, are not common within our precinct, I would imagine that in the event of a disaster, our role would be to be additional hands or boots on the ground, assisting emergency services as and where skills allow. Due to the relationship we have with the community and trust established, we have many platforms where we are able to communicate important information to community, which would also be beneficial. We're also blessed with a generous and supportive community who we have built a solid relationship with. So we've been able to set up a charity division within our community whereby we are able to assist on a small scale with clothes, food, and some essential items where required, which could possibly add to the value or add value after certain events. Okay, so there's a little bit of a background, and of course, for the record, this is Chad Milam. I'm the one of the directors of Disaster Relief Cert. CERT being the Community Emergency Response Teams Volunteer Network, just so that everybody knows where this message is coming from. And as per all my previous discussions, I normally try and keep the voice notes to about 5 minutes so that we can distribute them, one, maybe 2 or 3 per day, and don't flood the groups, etc. And then at the end of the discussion of the training session, I combine all of this into a YouTube video, and I'll upload it to our YouTube channel so that those that did not participate in the conversation or discussion or training would be able to still be able to listen to the training, which is basically in a podcast format. So I'm going to end off voice note number 1, and we're going to call this the role of entities, or entities' role in disaster management, or general entities' role. I'll come up with a name shortly, and then on the next voice note, we'll utilize the correct term for this session. In the last voice note, I didn't have a name for this particular training session or discussion, but now you'll be pleased to know that in voice note number 2, I've decided to call this the role of key role players during and after a disaster. Now, for the record, my name is Chad Milam. I'm one of the directors of Disaster Relief CERT, CERT being the Community Emergency Response Teams Volunteer Network, and of course my cell phone number is 0828592684. Right, intro done. Let's move on. In the previous voice note, I basically covered a couple of the comments that were posted to the WhatsApp discussion group, or group where I was holding the discussions, just as a bit of an opener, to find out what certain group members, specifically those of the CPF Neighbourhood Watch and Block Watchers, in particular, considered to be their role both during and after a disaster. And as you listen to the previous voice note, you'll hear that the replies were mixed and varied, and there wasn't anything specific or categoric. Now, at this moment in time, I need to in actual fact, raise a major concern, and by raising this concern, it'll provide context as to why I feel it is important that such a discussion, training session, or otherwise, is in actual fact held, and the difficult questions asked, and certain points being made for clarity and to define one's roles clearly and categorically. I just found it quite strange that during 2025 in particular, specifically within the city of Ekurhuleni area, certain comments were made, in particular by CPF precincts, which is not the same comments that I found coming out of the city of Johannesburg area. Now, just to give those of you that don't know a little bit of background, I've been working in the city of Johannesburg area for many years. The fact that I was born and raised in Joburg, and of course being positioned at Red Cross House in Joburg Park, 90% of our work was in actual fact done in the what today is known as the city of Johannesburg metropolitan area, even though as the operations manager for the South African Red Cross Society, we did work throughout the entire Southern Transvaal region itself, and also extended our support into the Free State in particular, and Northern Province, Northern Transvaal regions as and when required if they needed additional resources. And the conversations held with CPFs in the city of Joburg really and truly appeared to be completely different to what transpired in the city of Ekurhuleni. I had various CPF groups within the city of Ekurhuleni stating that they were the ones that were responsible of providing disaster management or disaster relief to their community. In a few instances, I was told outright, and not only myself, but through other communication, that basically nobody else was allowed to provide such services unless the CPF gave those entities permission to do it. Other statements that were made were quite clear in terms of how was it put? Oh yes, that's right. Non-government organizations such as Disaster Relief CERT, for example, needed to work within the structures, the existing structures in the area. And that, of course, coupled up with, without permission, you weren't allowed to operate kind of thing. Other comments that were made, just very briefly, were things like the CPF is responsible for the safety of the people in the area, and therefore nothing was allowed to be done without the CPF's go-ahead or the CPF's involvement, or whatever the case might be. So just to generalize at this stage, I think there were so many complaints in 2025 and statements of this nature that I might in actual fact do a couple of voice notes. But to avoid that and keep it in 5 minutes, which I've already exceeded, I think I'm going to end it off just on those couple of statements as a foundation for this particular training session. So I will catch you in voice note number 3 on the role of key role players during and after a disaster. Voice note number 3, the role of key role players during and after a disaster. This is Chad Milam, one of the directors of Disaster Relief CERT, CERT being the Community Emergency Response Teams Volunteer Network. My telephone number is 082-859-2684, and it's the 6th of February 2026 at 16:55. And just as a disclaimer, I know that there is some contention that we are supposed to change our name. However, until the legalities are finalized, we will still operate as Disaster Relief CERT, which we believe we are entitled to do so within the program or the spirit of the program for which CERT has been designed and developed. Right. That being said, having covered or introduced the foundation for the purpose of this particular training series, the very first thing I want to cover, and I think I need to cover the elephant in the room, where one has a CPF entity. Now, take note how I hesitated. I did not say structure. I said entity. Telling a non-government organization, regardless of whether it is us or any other organization, that they may not operate in any given area without the permission of the CPF, i.e., being given permission by the executive committee of the CPF, because if any permission were to be given by a CPF, it would have to be by the executive committee. If it is given by SAPS, then that would have to be given by the station commander. Nobody else could, in actual fact, provide any authority or decline any authority for that matter or permission to any non-government organization from being able to operate in an area. And any single person, whether you're a CPF member, whether you're a CPF committee member, an executive committee member, a neighborhood watch, same structure, not structure, same order, or block watch. If anybody within, or even within emergency medical services, towing, or any other grouping, any person who is of the belief that a non-government organization or a business or a sole proprietor needs permission from any other person, I want to say this to you. That is in violation of that non-government organization, business, sole proprietor, person or entity's rights to freedom of business and freedom of movement. You see, nobody needs permission from anybody to carry out a business. And I want to say to the executive committee members, and I want to be quite clear about this, you are contravening the South African Constitution when you make such statements. However, you are also responsible for disinformation. I'm not going to discuss misinformation in this next minute, but for disinformation. And I'll tell you why I'm putting it down to disinformation. Misinformation is the sharing of information which is inaccurate or incorrect, and the person sharing it is not aware of it. Disinformation, on the other hand, is where it is a deliberate, intentional intent of guiding or directing a specific narrative or requiring, wanting or promoting and pushing for a specific outcome. And if any CPF, Blockwatch, Neighborhood Watch entity, individual demands that other people get their permission to operate before they may operate, you in actual fact are responsible for disinformation. And that is not in line with our constitutional right to freedom of business, freedom of movement, and even freedom of expression. And I can tell you now, you need to, in actual fact, correct your message, because we are going to discuss the consequences in the next voice note in order to move on with the role of key role players during and after a disaster. So I'll see you in voice note number 4. Right, voice note number 4 on the role of key role players during and after a disaster. Chad Milam, Disaster Relief Cert, 6 February 2026, 1700, 082-859-2684. Right, in the previous voice note, I've stipulated that any entity, regardless of who you are, if you put a message out to your community that other NGOs or businesses or sole proprietors need the permission of your particular grouping, that you are in actual fact spreading disinformation because of the fact that at the end of the day, the only reason you would do that is in actual fact to ensure that your community will follow your instructions and commands only. So if you were a Blockwatch or a Neighborhood Watch, the purpose to put that message out was to ensure that if you pass instruction to the community would follow it, and any other entity that provides any kind of relief to the particular area would in actual fact be rejected, or even, this is where the danger comes in, be subject to violence. Now, let's be clear about this. This now becomes problematic. So, for example, where you've got a CPF in particular claiming that they are the only ones responsible for disaster management, or where they are the ones that are claiming that any other entity needs their permission or that they need to be vetted by a CPF or whatever the case might be, the community during and after a disaster may encounter those particular NGOs, businesses, community-based organizations, sole proprietors or otherwise, who during and after a disaster step in to provide relief. Now, this is what happens. Because community members are led to believe that only CPF may do it, they will then try and prevent those businesses or NGOs or community-based organizations from providing relief to the area. That is not conducive with saving lives or bringing relief to those that need it most. And lives may be lost from the community level. However, you will also find that community members will retaliate against any volunteers or staff members of those NGOs or businesses who attempt to bring relief into an area, and the community can turn on them and in actual fact chase them out violently. So now you've got a situation where the relief workers' lives are being endangered because you as a CPF feel it is appropriate to make those statements which are untrue, inaccurate, and unconstitutional. You as a CPF or a block watch or a neighborhood watch or an EMS entity or otherwise, you do not have that right, nor do you have that authority to make such demands or place such information into a local community structure. Doing so can cause the lives lost or be cause for lives being lost amongst relief workers and other community-based organizations who are tasked and who are encouraged and who are required in terms of the Disaster Management Act and the various disaster management frameworks, and in particular, in terms of the National Disaster Management Framework. And that is as per all 4 KPAs of the National Disaster Management Framework. And I want to be quite clear, as a representative of Disaster Relief CERT, and I want to speak to those CPFs, and I want to say to you straight, you need to change that as quickly as possible. This matter will be addressed during probably, hopefully, 2026 on national level from our side, because it is inappropriate, it is unconstitutional, and it is a danger to society, and it is a danger to relief workers. I want to be quite clear about that. Okay, now that I've thrown my toys out of the cot, we need to get down to looking at exactly what the roles are and how they in actual fact fit in and integrate within the DMA and the National Disaster Management Framework. So let's do that on the next voice note. The next one will be number 5, I do believe. This is the end of number 4.